Greetings and salutations, Tube Dwellers. Welcome back to Skyrim. Welcome back to SkyRe. That is Skyrim Redone. This is going to be a special episode, not your usual run-of-the-mill, let's run around and kill stuff kind of episode, but instead we're going to go through some of the additions of SkyRe, specifically the perks in the new skill trees. We're going to try to take a look at every single perk, and we're going to look at some of the new spells and whatnot to help us understand some of the perks. The illusion tree specifically has a lot of perks that you won't understand if I read them to you until you see the spells that they affect. So let's dive right in! We're going to start in the combat skills, but as we go in, I want you all to keep in mind that these perk changes are on top of the combat changes of SkyRe as well. They're actually two separate mods, so you could choose to not have the combat installed. But just know that when your primary attributes are low, you take penalties. If you take an unblocked attack, you take penalties to stamina and damage over time. And I don't know, there's all kinds of just general armor and attack kind of changes. So let's start with smithing. Your first perk is Blacksmith, 5 total ranks. It improves your tempering quality. Each one's 20%, so you can get 100% bonus. That is going to be a perk useful pretty much no matter where you're going in smithing, unless the cloth area, I suppose. Haven't really thought much about the cloth. And there's also Arcane Artisan. Having learned to bypass magic properties, you can now improve enchanted weapons and armor. Gonna jump all around here for a second. So that's the perk that used to be in the middle. Probably also going to be necessary no matter where you're going in blacksmithing. Meltdown. You can actually melt objects down, armors and whatnot, into their components. I think you can even do it with leather. You can take the leather back out of leather gear. I think you end up losing materials as you do this, but you get some raw materials back. And it applies only to types of armor that you can craft. So if you don't have steel crafting, you can't break down a steel whatever armor. These middle ones are going to be the special ones that don't really relate to light or heavy armor, I don't think. Let's see, tradecraft, jewelry, okay, and you can also make selected weapons out of silver and gold. Weaving mill, you have learned to see the value of clothing and developed the skill to craft various pieces at the tanning rack. So you can make cloth at the tanning rack. And one other up here in the middle, Deep Silver. Having understood the potential of strikes dealt by a silver weapon, you are now able to refine any weapon made of the said material to forge, creating a much stronger version. So I haven't had this, haven't used it, but I believe this is basically just like a super multiplier to your ability to temper silver weapons. And I think you could do that to make them just downright potent against special creatures, but also viable just to carry around in regular combat. I'd like to maybe do something off of a save, get that perk and try it out, make a silver sword, see how long it goes, and see the actual amount on it. May have to do that sometime in the probably not near future. Okay, we're going to go up the left side of the smith tree now. I believe these are all light armors. Leathercraft, skins and hides refactored into leather are a beginning adventurer's first choice for armor. You are now able to both craft and temper such gear. Full leather armor protects against heat and cold. Elven armor. Elven armor makes it easier to cast spells. Nordic design makes your your stamina and health regenerate faster. Glass Ethereum allows you to use a malachite to make glass. Full glass armor might absorb incoming spells. Dragoncraft. Dragon plate and scale both come in the Dragoncraft. So if you want the heavy armor version of Dragon, you actually have to go up the light armor side of the tree because there's no connector here. Full dragon armor increases movement speed and elemental damage with fire and ice. Wow, that is pretty intense. That's something that could be awesome for a mage even. Although there is a specific perk in almost every magic tree that has to do with Dreamcloth type of armor you can weave. Alright, let's go up the heavy side of the tree. Principles of smithing. You can temper with steel, craft and temper with steel. Full steel armor protects against bow and crossbow. You can now work with the Mysterious Dwarven Metal. Full Dwarven armor protects against both Falmer and Dwarmer constructs. Orcish Creed. I like how they rearranged these. Dwemer is actually before Orcish. It's not in the original tree, and Orcish is actually more powerful than Dwemer, which always confuses me. So now you can use Orichalcum to make Orcish bits. In full Orcish armor, all Orcish weapons become more devastating. That would be something interesting to put together on a character. Just to see if it makes like an Orcish axe become comparable to, say, a Daedric axe. I'm still not sure that the Orcish armor itself would be comparable to the armor values of some higher ones. Red Mountain's Calling. It allows you to work with the blood of the gods, Ebony. While clad in Ebony armor, all incoming magic is weakened. So, similar to Glass, except that Glass can just absorb spells, so it has a chance to make one spell completely do nothing. This slightly reduces the effect of all spells. Interesting, interesting. Daedric Study, or finesse with smithing and experience with Ebony, allows you to further imbue it with a Daedra heart, thus creating Daedric gear. Daedric armor causes fear that reduces an opponent's armor and allows the wearer to bind Daedra longer. So this could be useful for the Conjurer. This could be useful for any of the melee. Reduces their armor. Anybody that does melee damage, I would say probably more specifically most useful for two-handed and dual-wielding practices. But there you go. There's the smithing tree. But Blickum, those changes are amazing, and there's some actual real choices to have to it. Let's move on to heavy armor. Juggernaut increases your base armor 15%, 5 ranks. Stalwart defense, 3 ranks. You can deflect blade weaponry, and you resist shock magic by 10% while fully clad in heavy armor. Sorry for tripping through that. The word's a little bit weird there. I didn't necessarily want to read the whole thing. I just wanted to hit the major points. Conditioning, 2 ranks. Your increased abilities have made heavy armor feel lighter. Okay, so heavy armor weighs less. This is basically like a couple different resistances. Bladed weaponry and shock magic, so long as you're in all heavy armor. That's kind of interesting, the shock magic specifically. You've learned to let arrows bounce off your heavy armor. The more pieces you wear, the higher your chance to shrug arrows off with no damage. Monolith. The sheer power in your stance when you're wearing full heavy armor is enough to stagger the attacker of an unblocked incoming attack with a chance of 25%. So even when you take unblocked attacks, this would be amazing for a two-handed person specifically, but also, dual-wielding. Those are both kind of similar styles. As far as no defense, all offense, that would have a chance to stagger them. That's awesome. Bastion, your peak fighting prowess becomes apparent when wearing a full set of heavy armor, giving you a 25% armor bonus while in that state. So 25% armor when wearing all heavy. Titan, 0 out of 2. Hold on, that had ranks, right? That did not have ranks, so it was just the 25%. This has ranks. 2 ranks. Titan, you have adjusted to shifting your weight properly while in heavy armor, reducing all incoming stagger chance. Harmonize, dressed in a full matching set of heavy armor. You use each piece seamlessly, and it gives you another 25% armor boost. So this is kind of interesting. This was less stagger, right? No, this is a bonus to armor. Then we skip one. This would let you not be staggered at all if you got both ranks of that. And then more bonus to your armor. And then enemies' power attacks do 50% less damage. So heavy armor can basically turn a power attack into a regular attack. Wow. That actually has some survivability. I feel like if you were clad in heavy armor and you took one or both sides of this tree, you would basically not need any other damage mitigating abilities. I guess it doesn't cover all magics. You'd still have some weak magic resistance here and there. Block begins with Defender, 5 ranks. Blocking is more effective, goes up to 100%. Exhaust, after successfully blocking a melee attack, the attacker deals 25% less damage for 4 seconds. Nice, adds a little bit of extra utility to blocks. It had 3 ranks too, so that's going to get up to 75% less damage. And I'm sure they would attack at least once every 4 seconds. So long as you're blocking consistently, you would keep their damage nil. Deflect arrows, 2 ranks, 30% chance to deflect arrow totally. Make it do no damage, that gets up to 60%, I assume. Elemental Protection, 2 ranks. Blocking with the shield reduces all elemental damage by 15%. I would imagine that goes up to 30%. Block Runner, able to move faster with the shield raised, and then Shield Charge. Sprinting with the shield raised knocks most targets down. Disarming Bash, chance to disarm when power bashing. Debilitating Bash, regular bashes nullify the target's regenerative abilities for 8 seconds. That would probably be especially effective against mages, but even the stamina of about every character. Bashing does 3 times as much damage, and then, of course, the power bash. Let's go right up the center here. Quick Reflexes, the time interval that allows for well-timed blocking increases to 0.65 seconds. So in SkyRe, blocking on time is emphasized. There's what's called a timed block, and it has additional bonuses. I believe it totally shrugs the blow off, maybe not totally. I think it staggers them, and I think it takes some of their stamina. So that increases the time that you can get a timed block off. And with another rank, it gets up to... I don't know, even a larger amount. I'm not sure what that would jump to next. Shatter. Timed blocks have a small chance to destroy the attacker's weapon. That would be awesome to see proc. I'm not sure that I would really care to have that constantly. That would shut a fight down. That would shut multiple opponents in a fight down. Replenish, 2 ranks. When performing a time block, you restore stamina over 1 second. Maybe 2 seconds by the second rank there. Dispel. Time blocks against spells reduce spell damage to 25%. Only works with light shields. That is kind of awesome. That would stack with this elemental protection. But even more awesome, this is not deep in the tree. Hold on, if I can get back over to it here. This perk right here, Dispel, it only requires a block skill of 50, and it doesn't take that many perks to get up to. So that would be a surefire way to make spells just really do not crap if you were a sword and board character. Being able to stack with that, though, would be even more amazing. Heavy weaponry. Know first and foremost that there are a lot of new types of two-handed weapons in SkyRe. You start out with your regular barbarian, 5 ranks, 20% more damage, total of 100%. And then let me back up. Let me just... Okay, so the middle of the tree is still very similar to the way it was before, except for the very top perk. I'll go through each of those first. Each of these little outer arms is basically for a different type of weapon, for a different type of two-handed weapon. And we'll step through each of those in turn. So right up the middle we have Champion's Stance. Power attacks cost less stamina. We have Great Critical Charge, big criticals on charges, Devastating Blows. Standing power attacks have do bonus damage and have a chance to decapitate enemies. Sweep, sideways power attacks hit all enemies. And War Master, the new perk at the end, unblocked power attacks with two-handed weapons have a 30% chance to strike the target down. I've actually seen this in action. It's kind of comical. It looks almost like when a giant stomps, like their body kind of goes up in the air a little bit. It's kind of cool. Back into it. Let's start over on this far left side and work our way right. I said far left side. We have Thrash. Attacks with long maces deplete the target's stamina and slow its attacks down. 3 ranks, that probably gets up to 45%, which is a hefty slow. And it's 5 seconds, so it would last right between 2 different attacks. You could chain it. Collapse. Thrash additionally reduces the target's ability to block by 25%. So even when they are blocking, damage goes through better. That means power attacks are still devastating. Next, we have Judgment. Hitting any enemy who is performing a power attack forces the enemy to the ground for a few seconds. Only works with halberds. 2 ranks. I imagine that it gets longer. They stay on the ground longer. I don't know. I don't know how that works. Maybe the second rank gives an additional effect. That sounds like a possibility. Sounds like the type of stuff SkyRe does. Execution. Standing power attacks against targets affected by Judgment deal 50% more damage, and that's got 3 ranks, so I imagine that gets up to 150%. So with the halberd, once you knock somebody down, you can power attack them and do 150% damage. That sounds incredibly powerful. Moving right along, while wielding a battle staff, enemies below 50% health take 25% more damage. Again, 3 ranks, that probably gets up to 75% damage. It'd be kind of cool if the health factor of that increased too, so you would get that effect more easily. Pillar of Strength. While wielding a battle staff, all regular attacks hit all enemies in front of you. That, with this other sweep perk, would make you just an AoE master. Although do note that range of all weapons in SkyRe was decreased. I think the number was from like 141 to about 100, so almost a 30% decrease. I said increase just a second ago. I meant that the range of all melee weapons was decreased. So that makes that slightly less, oh my god. Limb Splitter. Attacks with battle axes cause extra bleeding damage, just like before. However, this one is new for battle axes. Boiling Point. While wielding a battle axe, each enemy hit has a 5% chance to trigger a rage, temporarily increasing all damage dealt by 50%. So again, 3 ranks. I imagine that gets up to 150%. And with this sweeping sideways power attack that hits multiple enemies, you can get this 5% chance up to, I don't know, 15, maybe 20% per swing. You might be able to get 4 enemies. Actually, that sounds a little crazy. That's probably too high. You'll probably get like 2 enemies, especially with the range decreases. Deep Wounds. Attacks with great swords have a 10% chance of doing critical damage. I imagine it gets up to a 30% chance, and that is amazing with some great swords. Blade Barrier. Timed blocks with bastard swords reduce incoming damage to 0 and damage the attacker's health by 5%. So that's a way to essentially get some block functionality out of a two-handed weapon, which is kind of cool. One with the Blade. Attacks with all two-handed swords are 10% faster. Amazing. Butterfly Strikes. Consecutive hits with Nadachis build up your attack speed up to a maximum boost of 30% after 3 hits. I wonder if the maximum goes up to 90%, or I wonder if it makes it to where you get the 30% after just 1 hit. I don't know. We're still here. We're still going deep. Come on now. More left. Skull Crusher. Attacks with Warhammers ignore 25% of armor, up to 75%. Supremacy. Power Bashing with a Warhammer hits all targets in front of you. So that's kind of interesting that Power Bashing specifically. That means for this perk to work, you would need the Power Bash perk from the block tree. Which it's worth going up some of the block tree anyway if you're doing the two-handed style. Heartseeker. Unblocked Yari hits deplete 5% of the target's maximum health. Dragons and giants are resistant to this effect, as their HP pools are much larger, so that would be imbalancedly large, 5% there. An imbalancedly large amount of bonus damage. Impale. Yari power attacks against an enemy's side or back, and sprinting power attacks cause heavy bleeding damage. That makes it sound like it's quite a bit more substantial than the battle axe variation of that. Whoa, whoa. Oh, man. Oh, God. Oof, we're just jerking all around here. What in the... Oh, no. Can we do this? I just want to go in this... God, I can't for the life of me get to this thing. It is like right out... Ah, there we go. Aha. Reaper's Gambit. Glaive power attacks are 30% weaker and cost 30% less stamina. So, this is kind of a fast attack speed kind of stack. I wonder if these go in the right direction. So I wonder if as you get ranks, the power attacks cost less and less stamina and get closer and closer to being regular strength. That seems it costs 60% less stamina but are 100% strength. That would be awesome if that was the case. Reaper's Verdict. Every unblocked hit with a glaive power attack increases all your weapon damage by 15% for 10 seconds, up to 45% on every attack, just by the fact that it procs on every attack. That seems quite a bit more powerful than the Battle Axe variation. The Battle Axe variation is going to proc on, I don't know, I'm going to guess between 5 and 10% of all attacks. It does more bonus damage, but it procs way less in a disproportionate way. So glaives, interesting. A lot of really great power there with all the different weapons, though. And you can see there are a lot of different types of weapons for heavy weaponry. Let us progress to light weaponry. Huge changes in this tree, and some awesome changes. A certain part of this tree specifically makes me want to do a certain type of character that was totally not viable on the harder difficulties in vanilla. I'll get to that in a second. Starts out with Armsman, just like a lot of trees. One of the first perks, still in place. One-handed weapons and unarmed attacks do 10% more damage. Yes, you see that right. Unarmed attacks. Let's go similar to what we did with the two-handed tree. Let's go right up the middle first. A lot of this outside stuff is specialized stuff. Some of this middle stuff even is. Bladesman. Attacks with swords have a 10% chance of doing critical damage. Oh, I guess I'm wrong. I think these outer 2 lines right here and right here are the general all tree perks. This is specialization, and that other outside So this is swords, 10% chance of crit. These are all kinds of different one-handed swords, I think. Tanto attacks that hit an enemy's side or back deal extra damage. Sneak attacks with wakazashis increase wakizashi damage by 8 and boost movement speed by 15% for 6 seconds. While dual-wielding wakazashis, this bonus is doubled. That's craziness. It's like the ninja weapon, I guess. Xiphos, while armed with shield and short sword, you deal 30% more power attack damage against staggered enemies. So that gives some synergy to using your shield to bash, to stagger them, and then doing a power attack with the weapon for extra increased damage. Masterful Fencer, timed blocks reduce incoming damage to 0. Attacks against blocking enemies deal no damage. Attacks against enemies that don't block ignore 30% of armor, only active while wielding a longsword. So that makes it to where they can block you way better, but they can't block you, you can block them way better, they can block you way better, and if they don't block, you do extra damage. Or I should say you ignore armor, so that doesn't always mean doing extra damage. Kendo, after performing a timed block while wielding a katana, your attack power gets boosted by 50% for 2 seconds. So attack power, I assume that just means damage. A timed block with a katana, huh? That's kind of cool. Katanas are one-handed swords, I guess? That's kind of weird. I guess there are smaller katanas. Dervish Dance. Attacks with scimitars have a slightly increased chance to stagger the target, and a very small chance to strike the target down. That seems like it would be an amazing two-handed style. Stagger off your regular attacks, chance to strike down. I would feel like Drizzt du Erden, and it would be amazing. Alright, so right up here in the center, let's actually, can we back up one? Yeah, that's where I wanted to go. So we've got Blood Price. Unblocked attacks with war axes and short spears cause extra bleeding damage. Short spears deal 30% more damage to bleeding targets. And then on the other side, I believe is the mace side over here. Bonebreaker. Attacks with maces and clubs ignore 25% of armor. Whenever you kill an enemy while wielding a club, your attack damage gets boosted by 10% and you attack faster. Which is kind of neat. Allows you to get the next couple hits a little bit more powerfully, a little bit faster. All of these specializations that I've went through so far, for axes, for swords, for maces, can lead to Myrmidon. You can get it off the top of any of the other specializations. With an empty or spell-wielding offhand, one-handed attacks are 15% faster. 3 ranks. That sounds amazing. This is the kind of thing that makes me want to go deep into this tree with Faran. And Duelist. With an empty or spell-wielding offhand, you can negate 5% of all incoming attacks, as long as you have a one-handed weapon equipped. So that basically makes it as though you're partially blocking, just if you don't have anything going on in your left hand, or if you have a spell or something over there. Again, kind of neat. That's the kind of thing that Faran will need if he is to be taken seriously in combat. We've got 2 little side perks here that I think go for pretty much the whole tree. Can do a one-handed power attack while sprinting that does double critical damage. Nice. Standing power attacks with one-handed weapons have a chance to decapitate enemies. All one-handed and unarmed power attacks consume 25% less stamina. Sweet little boosters to the whole tree. And now we have, I think these 2 far ones are some extreme specializations here. Oh yeah, okay, so right side's dual wielding, the left side, ooh, we'll get to it in a second. Dual flurry. Dual wielding attacks are 20% faster and deal 10% less damage, so they leveled it out a little bit. Interesting change. Elemental Flurry, while dual wielding, elemental damage and chance on your weapons are 25% stronger. That's kind of cool. Enchant for 2 different elements. Say, I don't know, like frost and lightning. It'll do extra damage. And you'll have both of the negative effects to stamina and magicka. Dual Savagery. Dual wielding power attacks do 30% bonus damage. Savage Storm. While dual wielding, standing power attacks hit all enemies in front of you. That's huge. Huge, hugely amazing. Florentine Combat. When striking an enemy, just as he would hit you, his attack does no damage. Only active while you dual wield. So that means that any attacks of yours that land at the exact same time as his attack, or just before, it makes his attack not do anything. That's an awesome way to have some semblance of defense when you're dual wielding. And Florentine Grandmaster. The time interval for Florentine combat's effect is 50% longer. So it makes it to where if you're just spitting those attacks out, I think this enchantment right here, or this perk for your enchantments, is the only one that doesn't really have synergy with the Elemental Fury shout, which I think is amazing. It's the best shout for a dual wield style because it stacks on what you're already putting all of your emphasis on, and that's attack speed. But this specifically, Florentine Combat and this Grandmaster that increases the effect, while you have Elemental Fury up, this would basically make you impregnable. They wouldn't be able to. You would constantly be hitting. Your swords would always be hitting one of these Florentine time windows. Okay, so one more side of the tree left here. We've gone through duel. Let's go through unarmed. Guard breaker. While unarmed, every hit does stamina damage. Blocked hits do additional stamina damage. So instead of getting health, you still get the stamina and you get huge amounts of it. Wind Fist Disciple. Unarmed attacks are 5% faster. You may only choose one Disciple perk. Stone Fist Disciple. Unarmed attacks deal 5 more damage. You may only choose one Disciple perk. So I think there are more things in the game that will benefit your damage. There are fewer things in the game that will benefit your attack speed. Attack speed stacks with damage, and damage stacks with attack speed. So, because there are more things that affect damage, and these values are equal, I think the attack speed would actually result in getting more damage, because there's more sources of damage, and this stacks with it. There are more sources of damage, but there are few sources of attack speed, and this stacks with those fewer sources. So, I don't know. I'm not sure I explained that perfectly well, but I think that this will just flat out give you more damage. If my experience with crunching numbers in World of Warcraft says anything, that would be the case. Style. Monkey's Trickery. Now remember, to get this perk, you have to come off of the top of Wind Fist Disciple. If the target of an unarmed attack carries a shield, you may steal it. If it carries no shield but a weapon, you might steal the weapon instead. I don't know if that's something that you just do on regular attacks, or, I mean, it's gotta be, right? That's hilarious. You can just take his shield from him. Shielded enemies? No, you don't get a shield. Latent Power, again, stacking off Disciple, the Wind Fist Disciple. 3% of your health is added to your unarmed damage, as long as you have more than 50% health. So here you get even more stacks with those attack speed, more damage to stack with this attack speed. Up the Stone Fist Disciple side, unblocked, unarmed power attacks have a 30% chance to strike the target down. So instead of taking their shield from them, you just smash them. Moving Mountains. While your stamina is above 50%, unarmed damage against huge creatures and heavily armored enemies is increased by 20%. Again, I kind of see favor in this perk because it adds some damage to all of your attacks regardless of the enemy you're facing. This only adds damage to certain types of creatures, so it doesn't affect some fights. And finally, in the unarmed tree, the perk that you can get on either side of this, Sorcerer's Wrath. You can enchant your fists and remove any enchantment from them at will. Enchantments placed on your fists are 30% stronger than on regular weapons. That is sick. This little tree over here, oh my god, I so want to make an unarmed character. This is just so amazing over here.